For this church leader tool, I wanted to share about my interview as Leadership Development Director. One of the questions I was asked is, what is your approach to personal leadership? And I suppose I had never given that any concrete thought. But pausing a second, it was easy for me to say my approach is Kaizen. If you're not familiar with that term, it's a Japanese term that literally means continuous improvement. And before I explain it a little bit more, let me tell you how it came to be. If you're older, you may remember that post-World War II Japanese equipment was not good. It was considered to be junk. It was not well produced at all. It was synonymous, in fact, for bad equipment, post-World War II Japanese equipment. But it was only in a decade's time that that really turned around. And part of the reason for that turnaround was the influence of some very bright people, key most among them, an American not really appreciated even in the United States as much as in Japan, and that American's name was Edward Deming. Deming came to Japan and he introduced a method of manufacturing and improvement that radically improved the quality of equipment produced by Japan. In fact, Edward Deming is still revered as a wonderful leader in Japan, even to this day. So this idea of Kaizen grew from Deming's manufacturing ideas translated in Japan as to mean in a system, or especially in manufacturing, to constantly improve the equipment that everybody on a line, for instance, like on an assembly line, has the responsibility to improve and make sure that whatever they're producing is done very, very well and continues to keep improving. So that means somebody on an assembly line can often make a suggestion of how what they're doing can be improved. And by continually improving, the product and the system that creates the product gets better and better. But of course, this can also be applied to one's personal life or personal approach to continually improve. Kaizen. It's just a wonderful one-word description of how any one of us can keep on improving. So let me just share a little bit of how I personally have incorporated this idea of Kaizen. Certainly one thing is reading. And reading in a variety of areas. That means reading the news and knowing what's going on in the world. It means reading non-church leadership things for me, some business things that are going on, and fiction as well, especially fiction that's well written that I can grow from, and of course church leadership. In fact, somebody recently shared that as they were identifying factors of why some congregations grow and others do not, one of those factors was asking key leaders, what are you reading? And it didn't matter as much what they were reading as that they were reading. They were continually improving. Another thing, of course, would be talking and listening to God. Listening to God through prayer and meditation and scripture, of course, and talking to God. You know, that's part of our improvement. And of course, others can help us with God, and they can help us to improve ourselves. Sometimes we don't like those comments from a family member, a spouse, about how we can improve. But if we listen to those things, we can take them in and continually improve ourselves. Now, of course, technology is another way that we can improve. We all know that that can become a rabbit hole and sometimes will lead us in areas that don't make us as continuing improving as we want. But there are a lot of wonderful apps and technology, the smartphone, just for the ability to keep track of tasks, to quickly send a message, to record while you're driving, a thought of how you wanted to continually improve something. Technology can be a wonderful blessing if used properly. For me, especially as I get older and hopefully smarter, I have more and more lists, more and more systems, more and more processes that I work to make sure that I'm communicating in the way that I want and to make sure that I'm delegating in the way that I want. A great example of this might be you could look for the church leader tool called Outreach Jumpstart Welcome. And in that teaching, you would find a whole list of all the things that my congregation does to welcome people. And when you have a list like that, then you can look at it and say, what do we need to tweak? What do we need to add? What do we need to improve? How can we apply Kaizen in that way as well? Certainly, we can adopt Kaizen into work and personal habits of how we do things. That's learning about the value of exercise and sleep and task management. We can continually improve those things. And of course, as I described with a welcome system in the life of a congregation, when you adopt Kaizen as a personal philosophy, you can also apply it to your organization. How are you delegating? Again, how are you welcoming people? How is your worship organized? How is your staff continually improving? When you get this idea, when it sinks in you of Kaizen, then you can start to just make it a part of who you are, to always be continually improving. Well, I hope this has been a blessing to you. And as always, if you found it helpful, forward this teaching on to somebody else so they can learn about Kaizen as well. God bless.